Okay, so we're now going to try to discuss how what we just learned about applies practically for people that are doctors and need to perform procedures or give shots to their parents, and what leniencies they have to rely on, or what they can't do. So first, in the Nishmas Avram, where Abraham quotes the Minchas Chinuch, who says, "V'nir la'niyas daiti, d'zeh shechayv haTorah b'haka aveim hainu dafka b'lo rishus." That when the Torah says that one can't hit or give a shot to one's mother or father, it's talking about dafka when they're not given permission to do so. Aval, if im aviv mochel umitzav hakoso, nira de eno chiyuv klal ve'eno over klal. Seemingly, there would be no isser involved, and it would be totally fine as long as the father gave permission to do so. Similarly, the Aruch HaShulchan says, "V'chein imhu oseh betov yoter mi'achar ve'aviv chafetz bo yachol asos." That if this son is a very good doctor and he's better than most other doctors around, and the father wants his son to do the procedure, then it's okay for the son to do the procedure. Next, the Har Tzvi, also quoted in Nishmas Avram, asks a question. He says, "Haven mechuyev lasos harfuah la'aviv." A son is required to heal one's father. Ela shetzarich lahader lasos al yedei acher im efshar lo. But he is required, if it's possible, to find someone else to do it instead of him, kedei shelo yichanis l'chashash shigas iser misa, so he doesn't come across the problem of a chashash shigas iser misa. So if that's the case, that a person is chayiv to do that and find someone else to do the refuah instead of him, to avoid this chashash shigas iser misa, then he asks a question, "V'im hidur is that ol b'kesef," and this hidur requires one to pay money to someone else to do the procedure. Lama lo yehi chayiv l'hotzi kesef? Why isn't it a requirement? It should be he's commanded to do so. It shouldn't just be that it's a nice thing for him to do, to give someone else money to do the procedure. It should be a requirement. He has to give money to the procedure, for someone else to do the procedure. So the Har Tzvi, Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, answers, "Harei tashlumin halalu eno me'etzem chiyuv kavod klal, ela shehu rotze lahakel atzmo, masa mitzvah b'mimona." It has nothing to do with the mitzvah kibud av. It's solely for the purpose of the son making it easier on himself. He wants to be machmir on himself. He wants to avoid the shigas iser misa, so he wants to make it easier on himself. It has nothing to do with the kavod aspect. It solely has to do with him trying to make it easier on himself. And Tzvi Pesach Frank quotes a story giving an example of this, and he says a father asks a son to get him food. So in order to do this, the son has to travel a far distance. So what does he do? He pays money. Why did he pay the money? Not because because it was out of kavod for his father, that part of the kibbud avim was paying money to get it, but rather he didn't want to have to travel far distance. He thought it would hurt his legs. His legs would be tired after traveling far distance. So to make it easier on himself, he decided to pay. But it has nothing to do with the kibbud av aspect. The Gesher Chaim also discusses this issue, Rav Tukachinsky, and he says, "Nishalti michuvash mumchet Talmud Chacham." I was asked this question from a Talmud Chacham, "Imhu rishai la'asos le'imo hazrikos lefi pekudas harofe," whether for the sake of refuah one can administer a shot to one's mother or father, and he gives 3 reasons to be matir. He says, number 1, kol stam chavalahi. The only time that giving a shot to one's father or doing a procedure on one's father would be usher is if 1, he causes blood to leave one's body, but if he bleeds, or 2, if he bleeds internally, like black and blue, or if he gets bruised and there's internal bleeding. However, sha'afal pi shelo yotze adam l'chutz. However, he says that if no blood comes out, and since in most he says, since in most vaccines no blood comes out, and most of the time when people give shots, no blood is released from one's body, it would be okay for a son to give a shot to one's parents, because the Isser of Chavala is only applies when either there's blood being released internally or externally. The second reason that he matters a son giving a shot to one's father or doing a procedure on one's father is from the Gemara Sanhedrin. Gemara Sanhedrin says, "Sham Sanhedrin parach ihachi acher nami." We have a question: Why is it okay for someone else to do it rather to heal somebody rather than a son? We know that there's an Isser Chavala for all people, not just a son. So why is it okay for other people but not a son? So the Gemara answers, since the son's punishment is more severe, and it's a potential Isser Chanek, while a person only has a potential Isser Lav, so we allow it for a Stam person, but not a son. So many poskim don't really understand this so clearly, and they ask, picture Rabbeinu poskim, Mali Isser Misa or Mali Isser Malkus. What's the difference whether it's Isser Misa or Isser Malkus? Either way, in our case, when it's talking about Chenek and a Lav, either way it's Usr. So what's the difference whether one's more severe of an Isser or one's less severe? Either way it's Usr. So why would we allow a Stam person to give a shot rather than a person's son? And furthermore, and if we're going to say that it's a mitzvah for a son to do a refuah for one's father, if it's, of course, for refuah purposes, then shouldn't a son be commanded to do it rather than a Stam person? It should be better for the son to do it. V'tirtzu, and he answers, the lo yadanu shabanu ya'aseh ba'oto ashir, hadrosh eno hachinami, shemuter leben k'mo la'acher. It says, ein hachinami, a ben can perform this act of giving a shot to one's father, and could help in his father's refuah. However, aval chashash hu shema yachvel yoter min hashiur, b'shvil zeh hechmiru b'bino yoter melacher. However, we're afraid that when the son gives a shot, he's going to cause more blood to be lost than necessary, and therefore we're machmir, and we push the responsibility onto somebody else. However, he says when you don't done in our case, shekol mumcha v'ragil osa son hazrikas b'shiur she'amar rofei ein lacho shema yachol yoter min amida. If there is an experienced doctor, and in our case, if the son is an experienced doctor, and he knows most of the time he does not cause any excess blood to be lost, then we would allow it because we don't have the concern that extra blood will be lost. A third reason brought up by the Gesher Chaim is as follows. He says, Yesh lahosef b'nidon didan nufa chadash leder. A third reason to be matir. Achar shehaben osa harfua b'chinam, umimcha achar lo yaseh b'chinam, yesh lomer shechashive zos leika achar. He says a big chiddush. He says, if the son is there, he's willing to do it for free, of course, for his father, and there's a person, another doctor there, that was not willing to do it for free, it's considered as if it's a leika acher, and there's no one else there to do the refuah, and therefore the son would be allowed to administer the shot. And furthermore, we see from the Gemara Kiddushin, Perak Mishal Av, that a ben does not have a chiyuv to pay for a father. So even if there was someone else there, the ben wouldn't have a chiyuv to pay for the father, and just a further proof to this chiddush by the Gesher Chaim. So we just saw 3 chidushim by the Gesher Chaim, 3 heterim by the Gesher Chaim to allow a son to administer a shot to one's father. So we now have Rav Herzog, who asks 2 questions on the Gesher Chaim. First question is, Ma she'kamar ga'on el shlita, referring to the Gesher Chaim, that which the Gesher Chaim said, Dan she'im ha'echa notel schar, harei zeh ke'ein sham acher, that if one son is willing to do it for free and another person is not willing to do it for free, it says if it's Leika Acher and there's no one else there, and therefore the son would be allowed to administer the shot. And he continues, Hinei Ledidi Ein Ze Barer, but in my opinion, this is no heter at all, and this can't be trusted. The Asu Mishum de Tzarech Litein Schar, Mutter Lo La'aniach Livno La'asos Iser. Are we really going to say that just because the son is willing to do it for free and another doctor is not willing to do it for free, we're going to allow the son to be involved in a potential Isser? It can't be that this is the case. Second question is, V'chein Mashidan Ka'amar Gon She'ein Ben Mechuyev El Shalem Schar K'Sha'av Ani Denikatani Mishal Av. He talks about the case of Mishal Av, where the son would not be chayiv to pay anyways for the father because it's Mishal Av. It's the father's responsibility to pay. However, Rav Herzog says, Kol Zeh Im Ha'av Yeshla. This is only talking about when the father has money. However, Aval Ein Lo, but what if the father doesn't have money? Chayiv HaBen L'Refuaso Mishal Av. Then in that case, the ben would be chayiv to pay for the father. So you can't say you can't bring that as a proof. The Gesher Chaim can't bring that as a proof because it only applies in some of the cases. It only applies when the father has money. But what if the father doesn't have money? Then the ben would be chayiv. So you can't bring that as a proof for the Gesher Chaim. He quotes him in Chatzinoch who says, "She'im amar lo aviv asa bichabura lo aver haben klum." That if the father tells the ben, you could do it, you can make a chabura on me in order to help my refuah and to bring my refuah, then seemingly the son will not be over any isser at all. L'fi zeh, dai she'aviv yomer lo asali zrika azu, ve'im tishel v'tasa chabura ani mochel al l'mafreya. However, he adds on the Minchas Chinuch that the father should say before the son administers the shot or does the procedure on him that he's mochel him for any additional chabura that then is necessary. And if he causes any extra bleeding, then it's what really needed, then he forgives him and it's okay. He then discusses the Rambam. He makes a diak in the Rambam's wording. He says, "O davar, hinei miloshen Rambam, mashma sheyesh b'chal chiluk ben uman l'stam ben adam." From the lashon of Rambam, you can clearly make a chiluk between someone who's a professional, who's a real doctor, and just a stam ben adam. Sharehu Omer b'zeh lashon, and this is what he says: Lo yakiz dam la'aviv. A person should not draw blood from one's father. Im hayarofe lo yachtuch b'bisarav lo yachtuch b'menu iver. However, if he's a doctor, he shouldn't cut off a limb or cut off a piece of flesh. So he says that's a little bit weird. V'amai lo nakis b'reisha im haya uman lo yakiz dam laviv. The Rambam only says in the case of cutting off a limb or cutting off a piece of flesh that if he's a doctor he shouldn't do so. Why didn't he specify a doctor in the first case? He only says lo yakiz dam laviv, that a stam ben adam shouldn't give a shot to one's father. Why didn't he specify a doctor? He just says a stam adam shouldn't do it. So there must be a chiluk between cutting off a limb or meat and between administering a shot to one's father. Continues, he says, Shema mina sheyesh chiluk ben davar ka'al behakaza leveinu tuach b'vaser. There must be a chiluk between something very not severe like giving a shot and between cutting off a piece of meat or a limb. So he says, behakaza dafka b'stam ben adam choshishim shema yavo lidei shigas chanek. Behakaza, we're worried that just a stam adam is going to cause more bleeding than necessary, and therefore a ben adam, in this case referring to his son, we're afraid he's going to cause more bleeding than necessary, and therefore we're afraid of a shigas chanek, so we don't allow it. However, if he's a professional doctor, it's very uncommon for him to mess up just a simple vaccine and cause more bleeding than necessary. And he continues, "Ve'im yaseh chabura harizeh begeder anos." And even if he does somehow make a mistake and cause more bleeding than necessary with just a simple vaccine, it's complete anos and it's okay. However, he says, "Lo kein b'chatichas basar ve'ever." This is not the case by cutting off a limb or a piece of meat. Shemi'uta deshchiach gam b'refrum l'kalka. Because it's even likely that a doctor who has a lot of experience with this kind of stuff, with cutting off limbs and with doing major procedures, it's very likely and very possible that he will cause more bleeding than is necessary. So that's why, by a case of cutting off a limb or doing a major procedure, we don't allow a son to do it, even if he's a great doctor, because even the greatest doctors make a slight mistake and cause more bleeding than necessary, and we don't want the son to take that chance. And he ends off, he says, so he says, by a case where a son's a doctor and he's giving a shot, it's okay because most doctors don't cause any extra bleeding than necessary by giving shots. So we'll allow the son to give the shot. However, by cutting off a limb or doing a major procedure that requires cutting flesh, even the greatest doctors sometimes can make a mistake. They don't want to take that chance for the son to cause the father to lose any extra blood, so therefore we would not allow the son to do a serious procedure like that. In summary, we discussed the Minchas Chinuch and the Aruch HaShulchan, who said very similar ideas. They said that if the father gives reshus, or even commands the son to give him a shot, then it's okay for the son to do so, and there's no avera involved at all. We then discussed the Har Tzvi, who asked the question, why is Nidach Chiyuv for the son to pay money to avoid the Shigyus Isser Misa? And we answered, because the paying of the money has nothing to do with the kavod aspect of the mitzvah, rather it just has to do with making himself more comfortable and making it easier on himself. We then went on to the Gesher Chaim, who gave 3 reasons to matir a son giving a shot to one's father for refuah. One was that since in a case where one is just giving a vaccine to his father, no blood is really going to be released from his body. So therefore it's okay, because in order for there to be an Isser of Kabbalah, blood either has to be released externally or internally. Second reason he said was that if a son is a professional, there's no chashash that he'll cause any bleeding more than necessary, and therefore we would allow it. The only reason why the Gemara distinguishes between a stam ben adam and a son is because the Gemara originally thought that if the son is not a doctor, he's going to cause more bleeding than necessary. So we don't want the son to do that. But over here, the Gesher Chaim says, if the son is a doctor, and we know that chances are he's not going to cause more blood to be left from the father's body than necessary, so it's okay. And the third and final reason from the Gesher Chaim was a case where the son was willing to do it for free for his father, and there's another doctor there that wouldn't do it for free. So the Gesher Chaim has a major chiddush. He says that that's considered leika acher. It's considered as if no one else is there, and it's okay for the son to do so. And we brought a raya from the Gemara Kedushin Mishel Av. Then we saw Rav Herzog. Rav Herzog asked 2 questions on Gesher Chaim. One was, are we really going to say that it's considered a leika acher if the son is willing to do it for free and someone else is not? Are we really going to say that if we're dealing with a potential Isser Misa? Second question was, by the Gemara Mishel Av in Kedushin, the son is only not chayiv to pay if the father has money. But what about a case where the father doesn't have money? Then the son would be chayiv to pay. So that's not a good raya either. And he then says, he quotes the Minchas Chinuch and says that if the father gives reshus to the son, then it's okay. However, he adds in that the father should tell the son beforehand that even if by mistake you cause more bleeding than necessary, I'm mochel you, and it's okay. He then finally, the last thing we did was he quotes the Rambam, and he's medayik in the Rambam's lashon, and he makes a chiluk between administering a shot and doing a more serious procedure like an amputation. He says, since the Rambam's lashon is as follows: lo yakiz dam aviv, by a shot, and by a serious procedure like an amputation, he says, im haya rofe lo yachtoch b'besar lo yachtoch mimenu ever. Since he leaves out the rofe part of the first by giving shots, so it must be that it's less severe by giving shots. So since the Rambam's lashon is as follows: lo yakiz dam aviv, since he says a regular stam person should not draw blood from one's father. However, by a more serious procedure, like an amputation, he says, Im haya rofe lo yachtok b'sar lo yachtok menu ever. By a more serious procedure, he specifically identifies the doctor that the doctor shouldn't do it. There must be a chiluk there, and he says that by a something as kal, just a kaza drawing blood, we're afraid that a stam person may make a mistake and draw more blood than necessary. However, if the son is a doctor and he's a real professional and he's experienced with this, there's no way that he's going to cause more blood to be lost than necessary. And even if he does, it's complete unus and it's okay. However, by a case of amputation or a more serious procedure, even the greatest doctors in the world sometimes make a mistake and cause more blood to be lost than necessary. So in that case, we would not allow the son to do the procedure because we don't want to deal with the potential isser.
Cheers ended, everybody. Have a great day.